When I first started playing competitive golf, or just golf in general, I never really focused on handicap. But the idea of scratch golf was something I heard so frequently that it basically lost all of its meaning. This pro says you need to have an amazing short game. This pro says you need to hit bombs off of the tee. And of course, the favorite, your friend who knows a guy that plays in a league with a scratch golfer, says it's all about having the latest and newest Ninja Kawasaki Demon Jesus Christ Lord Savior Pro shaft in your driver. Can't you tell that I am not an equipment junkie? As my average score has started to drop to 81 and some change, and my handicap is getting into the low single digits, I've been thinking a lot and looking a lot at my data and trying to understand what's it really going to take in order for me to get to that next level, and that next level is scoring consistently in the 70s. And while I think there is some truth to every single piece of information I've heard or read or been told about getting better at golf, I think that most of this advice is missing one simple idea. Every single shot in golf starts with one simple thing, and that's strike. Let's talk about that right now.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, very nice. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel. My name is Kenny. Some of you may know me as Kennie Kat. I am a competitive golfer, and my goal is to help you improve your golf faster by learning from some of my successes and some of my failures. If you want to know what practice guides, what training aids, and what things I'm working on that might help you improve your game faster, hit that subscribe button below. I release new content every single week. And of course, it's free. If I could go back 3 years before I started golf and tell myself one thing, it would be this. Work on putting that ball in the middle of the club face every single time. And make sure that your low point comes after the ball, obviously with irons and wedges, every single time. You can't put that ball in the center of the club face. You're going to have a whole world of other issues to work on. Now, one thing I was not aware of until I started playing with, tour quality players and elite level golfers was exactly how good is a good strike. I'm going to grab a club and a marker, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Being in Arizona, I'm fortunate enough to have access to some of the best trainers and some of the best golf instructors that work with tour level professionals and elite level golfers. And because I've been in this environment, I've been able to really quickly learn exactly how good they are at striking the ball and really what a good strike means. So with me, I've got a dime, and a dime is roughly 17 millimeters in diameter. So that means from the middle point to the other middle point, from the fattest side through the middle. And most tour level ball strikers, or most really good ball strikers on tour, are able to control their strike within, 2 to 3 millimeters. Like, they're really good. But if you want to be like scratch level good, you've got to be able to put the ball inside of that area. And what does that look like? Art is not my best skills. So that's a 17 millimeter area, right? That's almost 2.5 times a larger area than most tour pros and most elite level golfers are working with. I know some of you down that lens are like, that's absolutely insane, because it was pretty crazy when I first heard it, but I think it's helpful to visualize it, because I know for a fact, if you're like me, you're hitting that ball over here, you're hitting that ball over here, you're hitting that ball sometimes in some spaces that don't have grooves. Like, trust me, I understand. It's a lofty goal. It's a lofty goal. That's as tight as your grouping should realistically be, if not better, if you're planning on becoming a scratch golfer. So I'm gonna pull up my Arco stats and do a live review with you so we can talk about why I'm gonna be focusing religiously on strike for the foreseeable future. So we're gonna go over my last 20 rounds in Arcos, and as you can see, they had me roughly at an 8.4 handicap, and compared to a 0 handicap golfer, which is a scratch golfer, I'm roughly 9.9, let's just call it 10 strokes on average worse than a scratch golfer. And we're gonna start off by taking a look at my driving data. We can quickly see that 3/10 of a stroke of that is coming from distance. Now, I average 282 yards with my driver. It's clearly not an issue of distance, but what I will say is that poor strike does lead to me not hitting every single shot off of a a tee box, which sometimes I'm using a hybrid or a 3-wood or whatever have you, which is definitely going to decrease my average distance. If I'm not striking those as clean as I should be, then yes, my average distance is going to come down. So strike is really important to make sure that I'm achieving my maximum distance. What I'm going to look at is accuracy and penalties, because these two pretty much go hand in hand. So 7/10 of a stroke in accuracy and 1.2 strokes in penalties on average. Now, if we look down at my driving accuracy, I'm hitting roughly 44% of my fairways, which isn't that bad, considering that a scratch golfer is around 51%. I can tell you just personally from knowing my game and knowing exactly what's going on, it's not that I'm missing and going out of bounds by a large margin. It's when I'm not striking it exactly in the center of the face where I want it to be that we can sometimes get a drive that's a little bit outside of the range that I really want to be hitting a shot. And that's where I'm causing myself to lose strokes. That shot might just be, 5 or 6 yards off the line that I'm expecting it to go. And that's going to cause me to lose balls. And losing balls out of bounds is absolutely something that you cannot afford to do under any circumstance when you're trying to play competitive golf and play with a good score. But if you're hoping to get into a scoring average of the 70s, it is just imperative that you find your ball after every single tee shot and that it's not out of bounds. The next thing I want to take a look at is putting. So I'm losing roughly 2.8 strokes on average to a scratch golfer on the putting green. And most of that comes down to putts between 10 and 25 feet. Now, my inside of 10 feet has gotten a little bit better. And my outside of 25 feet has also improved. And then obviously 50 plus feet is just like, I rarely have putts 50 plus feet or more. But the vast majority of my putts are inside of 10 to 25 feet. And I'm losing 1.4 strokes from that distance. There's a lot that goes into putting. Green reading is definitely one of them. And I know I'm not the best green reader. But the biggest thing that comes down to it is pace control. And in order for you to control your pace and pick the line, you got to hit it at the speed you intend to. And I'm fairly good at starting my putt on the correct line. But one thing I definitely notice in my game is that as my putting stroke gets longer, I do have the ability to miss-hit my putts. And if I don't hit my putts in the same exact spot on the putter face every single time, that means that I'm going to have different speed and different results of the ball. The ball rolls at a different speed, it's not going to hold the line that I'm aiming it on. And that's a huge reason as to why I see a lot of strokes lost myself personally from that 10 to 25 foot distance. My distance control is a little bit spotty because I'm not hitting the putter in the center of the face. So the next thing I want to look at is my short game, which is basically inside of 50 yards, chipping it around the green. And this is one of the strongest areas of my game. I'm only losing 1.3 strokes on average to a scratch golfer. Now, if you look at my strokes gained from 0 to 25 to 25 to 50 yards, it's pretty darn good in these areas. My proximity to the pin is really, really, really close and on par with a scratch golfer, but my up and down percentage is poor as a lack of my putting. It's clear to me that my short game is good for one simple reason. If you look at the first wedge that I've ever owned, and my short game has always been good, if I grab the first wedge that I've ever owned and played with, the wear marks are almost all out of the center of the face. And that's really what it comes down to. If I'm hitting the ball consistently and striking it in the same spot, then I have a more predictable result of how the ball is going to react. And if I have a predictable result, it's very easy to calculate where you're going to hit shots in order for them to react a certain way. And then obviously my sand game, which I've worked on improving, needs to get a lot better, but that's a whole different story. But again, that comes down to strike as well. Even though you're not striking the ball, my low point of where I'm striking the sand at and relation to the ball has to improve in order for the ball to react a certain way. So again, it's not a lack of speed control. It's not a lack of technique and hand and path and face orientation. It's really just my inability to simply strike the sand in the same spot as often as I would like to get a repeatable result from the ball. And then last but not least, we get to approach play, which is all the irons and all the hybrids and all those second shots into greens off of tees. And this is where I'm losing 3.6 strokes on average, by far the biggest area for improvement. Now, we're not going to go too much into the details of this, simply other than looking at one key point out. 200 yards and out, I happen to be almost as good as a scratch player. And I attribute that down to one thing. It's not because I'm a better ball striker. It's because the clubs that I use from that distance are hybrids and woods. And because those faces are a little bit more forgiving, that means that I'm more likely getting close to my expected distance carry when I'm hitting those clubs. And that's honestly it. When we go down to the bottom and we look at my greens in regulation and we look at my approach shots, I'm hitting 7.2 greens in regulation on average. And the vast majority of those shots that aren't hitting the green are falling either just to the left or to the right of the green. So roughly 11 shots are at least getting hole high. It's the 5 shots that are falling short of the green, the big issue, and that is all down to strike. Because if you look at the average distance to the pin, when I hit the green, I'm 19 feet on average. So my good is good. It's actually better than a scratch player, but my bad is really bad. I'm almost 20 feet away from the pin on average. And that's likely a result of those shots that are coming up short as a result of poor strike. I've been fortunate enough to play with a lot of really good golfers. And whether you're a scratch player or a tour player, you're gonna have days where you miss a decent amount of greens because you hit your shot a little too left or a little too far right. But what you can't have is days where you consistently miss greens long and short because of poor strike. And if you're not striking the club in roughly the same part of the face, you're not gonna have any control of your ball flight or distance. And if you can't control your ball's distance, the natural random chaos of golf is going to make it near impossible to avoid bogeys or worse. So that's my personal opinion when it comes down to the question of how do you become a scratch golfer or how do you break it into that elite level game of golf. You've got to be a competent ball striker. If you can't hit the center of the face, you can't control the ball flight, you can't control launch, you can't control spin, like you just have no realistic control over what your ball is going to do after it leaves that club face. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be able to hit your target or as close to your target often enough to shoot low scores and to avoid the big blow-up holes. At the end of the day, it all comes down to ball striking, and that's the thing that I'm going to be focused on exclusively moving forward in my training, and you're going to see a lot of that in my videos with Kurt. There are a lot of different ways to swing a golf club, but no matter what,
hit the ball in the middle of the face. Let's start with that. My dad was a big proponent of swinging absolutely as hard as you possibly can on 2 conditions. 1, you can maintain balance, and 2, you can guarantee you can hit the ball in the middle of the face. That allows me to, 1, to be able to hit the ball further, but with less effort, and 2, control my misses.
That's really all I have for you down that lens. As always, thank you very much for watching my YouTube channel. Deuces, people. Let's keep it moving.